the first one was interviews with New Zealand elite raw powerlifters, and so the idea there. So I published or had in press a study that talked around what we know currently about tapering and peaking for strength sports. So focused around actual tapering as well as training cessation or just taking time off and seeing how that works. And then I jumped into the first study, which was sitting down and chatting with a bunch of different elite level powerlifters from New Zealand at the time. This was 2014. I wasn't allowed to talk to myself though.
So how did the conversation?
But I could talk to everyone else.
How did the conversation with Jono go then? How hard was he to?
I can't remember if I did one with Jono. I must have though. But yeah, I mean, that one would have been more than 10 years ago that I did that study. So basically, I chatted to a bunch of people. It was kind of like, why do you taper? What do you do? And it was a really like semi-structured interview. So it wasn't sitting down with just a set list of like survey questions and going through those. It was like, okay, what do you do here? And then tell me about.
So it was more bottoms up
like
kind of
data and
qualitative.
Yeah, like there were, I think, about 8 or so questions, and some of that we gathered quantitative information. Like how many days off do you take for a meet? How many weeks is your taper? When do you have your peak training volume? All of those sorts of things that kind of were part of it. Because with the strength and conditioning journal, if you just throw them like qualitative stuff, they're not really going to like that very much. They kind of like to have some numbers, and if you're a reviewer in those journals, you're used to having some numbers. And that was my first taste of qualitative research and doing this sort of, thematic content analysis, which is funny because we've actually gone down that route with a few more studies. And we're working on one now, which is basically pulling together all of the surveys that me and a bunch of other researchers locally and nationally. So we've also got a guy over in Aussie, Justin. And so we're, throwing these things that we've done on weightlifters, powerlifters, strongmen, Highland Games, CrossFit, powerlifters, like all of these different strength sports athletes. And we're going to do a bit of a systematic review, see what else is out there outside of the stuff we've done as well, pull it all together and then actually tell a story. So that's something to probably keep an eye out for. I don't know when to be published. I'd say probably
that would be a fun one
at the latest. So we're about to start gathering that data. So that'll be pretty cool. But anyway, back to the PhD. So we had the interviews, figured out what people do. And then the idea really from that was let's try and test some of these theories about what's being done. And so we did a training cessation training study. So that was looking at around about 3 days off versus around about 5 days off and seeing if there was any difference. Pretty similar, both of those. There wasn't really any, neither of those timeframes was negative, but there were some positive things seen within that. So basically taking a couple of days off is probably a good thing to do prior to a competition. And with the caveat of it's all going to depend on what training you've done before. That was one of the things that I had with my studies was I think I don't know if I gave them a hard enough training that they really needed, a long period of time off or a long period of reduced training. So that's probably one thing when I look back. But then also I was targeting resistance trained, but not powerlifters and basically making them do a powerlifting program. So, some give and take there.